Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What Do They Know podcast. Week 1 is finally here, and the guys will dive into all the action from the games this week, including their biggest takeaways, top fantasy football performers, and they'll also take a look back at some of their preseason predictions and where they stand after Week 1. As always, don't forget to send in those questions or comments as you're watching the games this week. But hey, what do they know?
What do they know? Well, we're about to find out what's going on, everybody. This is the What Do They Know podcast. My name is Nick Hoskins with my buddy Jeff Garcia.
Hello.
Hope you guys had a great week. Week 1 is here. We're going to break down all the action today as best we can for you. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. But we're going to get started with our new segment once again. This is our random thought of the week. Doesn't have to be sports related, just something that kind of caught our minds this week. And I'm going to let Jeff go because I know he's got a topic for this week.
I always have topics. My mind always wanders, especially at work. But this week, with this whole podcast thing, I was kind of, I don't want to say forced, but I guess encouraged to get like a Instagram and
I was forced too.
Yeah.
Explore. I didn't want one, but
exactly.
Trying to be expand our brand for the brand. Shout out Pat McAfee.
Yeah, for the brand. That's right. So it just becomes one of those things where it's like social media etiquette in terms of if you follow the same person on both accounts, do you, what exactly do you do? Do you like, if they post the same thing on both platforms, do you like it twice, or are you now a certified weirdo?
You know, it's funny. That's always been my thing with having Facebook and Instagram. Like up until we had this show and we were trying to make sure our show got out there, I never had an Instagram.
Right.
Because I watch my wife when she posts something, she'll post it on Instagram and then she'll like copy what she wrote or whatever. And then she'll paste the exact same thing on Facebook. And I think they even have, because they're technically owned by the same company, like you can post the same thing on both pages, like simultaneous. Mm-hmm. And so I've never understood the point of it, to be totally honest. I think both of us are just on Instagram to, for the show.
Exactly.
I think that's fine, but I think it's funny that you bring that up. I think that's a good
yeah. And like if I see like someone's story on like Christy, if I see on Facebook, do I now go over to Instagram and see it there?
Right.
Or do I not do that? I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like, I don't think it's the right answer. But if there's social media etiquette, I would like to know what it is.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Send us your tips and tricks for social media etiquette.
That's right.
All right. Well, that's a good one. I don't have any random thoughts this week, so I'm going to let Jeff kind of...
You're a parent. You're not allowed to have random thoughts.
Yeah.
Your thoughts are your...
I don't have time to have random thoughts.
Exactly.
My random thoughts are how to properly potty train a 2-year-old. That's
where it goes.
That's my random thoughts for the week.
Oh, absolutely.
But all right. So before we get into the week 1 action, we're going to finish off our summaries of Hard Knocks. Last week was the final episode, obviously right before the season started. Mm-hmm. I actually really enjoyed it, even though, and I say that that way because there was hardly any football in it whatsoever. Like it was all like, the training camp was over, games were over, cuts, they showed briefly cuts, people getting cut and then people finding out they were making the team. That was cool to watch. Mm-hmm. Especially when they tricked the young wide receiver, Xavier Gipson, and made it seem like he was going to get cut and then told him that he had made it. That was pretty cool to see. I love the behind the scenes from that aspect, but I want to say that was like maybe the first 10 minutes. And then the rest was just all like them kind of going out as a team, going to see the Michael Jackson show on Broadway, which I thought was hilarious how many of them just really enjoyed it and got excited and were like dancing the next day. And, people were like, oh, Garrett Wilson reminds me of the dude that was playing Michael Jackson. I thought that was hilarious.
All limber and stuff.
That's and right. I think my favorite part of the show, one of the few scenes that actually had football in it, was Robert Saleh's kind of pep talk to the team.
Yeah, that was the big takeaway there.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, I was pumped up. Like I was ready to run through a wall after I heard that. I mean, basically the premise of the speech, and I'm obviously paraphrasing. He said something to the effect of like, when you're after a game and you're meeting a coach at the 50-yard line and maybe your team's not as good and their team is good, they always say, man, your guys play hard.
Right.
And he basically, said, forget you. He didn't use that word. He said, I don't want to be guys that play hard. I want to be guys that win.
Right.
And, he was like, let's make sure that nobody says that we play hard anymore. And I thought that was a really, really good speech to kind of kick off the season. because they don't want to be the quote unquote same old Jets.
Right.
And you hear that so much. I even say it. They're the Jets. At the end of the day, they're the Jets. I'm one of the worst people to say that probably, but
Right.
so I thought that was my favorite part of the show.
Yeah, I mean, me being like kind of like the devil's advocate, my mind just goes to straight up. Who's going to be the first coach that goes up to him and tells him exactly that? Hey, you guys play hard, just for even if it's
Probably
for the giggles. Probably Belichick. I would not even be surprised about that. But yeah, just one of those things where it's just going to take him off. And I mean, this show overall exposes all the players and all the coaches of their likes and dislikes and how their ideologies and whatnot. So it puts them out there for
sure.
scrutiny and little comebacks that I'm sure are going to be brought up throughout the entirety of the season. So,
and even Christy, to your point, Christy, we were watching the last episode and they showed one of the pep talks that the defensive coordinator was given, Jeff Ulbrich, and she was like, "Man, he's got a bad mouth, but I really like him." She's I like the way that what he says and the way he coaches. So he gained a fan in her just from the show, and I think that's obviously one of the favorite things about Hard Knocks is seeing all the behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. He every other word is basically
part of his vocabulary, for
absolutely.
Sure. But I really liked watching him as well. Obviously, Robert Saleh, I really enjoyed the stuff that he said. We wouldn't be doing our jobs if the last episode we didn't talk about the UFO story. Aaron Rodgers, that was the creepiest / coolest story. For those who didn't watch the show, Aaron Rodgers gave a very, very detailed description or recollection of when he and his buddies in college apparently witnessed a UFO flying super low. They heard an alarm that they, came to find out later was from a nuclear plant that was like 7 miles down the road.
Right.
And then they said that once the shortly after the UFO disappeared, they heard fighter jets go whizzing by.
Right.
So that I can't even imagine, we're not going to get into a debate on the show whether UFOs are a thing or not, but his story, man, I don't know how you think otherwise.
Especially I think it was like around draft time where he got drafted.
Yeah, he was staying at his buddy's house, I think in Jersey. Very, very cool and crazy story.
You always hear these UFO stories and it's always about it's just them as witnesses, but he actually had
multiple people. Yeah,
witnesses.
His buddy and his buddies, I think brother or something that were all there.
Yeah.
So that was wild.
I'm by.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I am for sure on that story.
Absolutely.
So overall, I enjoyed it. People have asked me as a Jet fan what my thoughts were. It wasn't as good as I expected, to be honest. Just the show as a whole. I really enjoyed Detroit's last year more than the Jets, to be honest with you. Partly because of Dan Campbell, but I think part of it could be, and this is just me speculating, they didn't announce who was going to be on Hard Knocks this year until I think 2 weeks before the show even started, because they basically had to force the Jets to do it.
Right.
And they typically announce it months prior. So they being NFL Films have time to prepare who they want to do backstories on, who they want to interview, so on and so forth. And I didn't feel like there was a lot of that this time around. And I just think that it could strictly just be because of the short notice, but still really enjoyed it. Obviously you could put anything about the Jets in front of me and I'll enjoy it.
You'll eat it right up. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that concludes our recap of Hard Knocks. Hopefully you guys, took something out of that or enjoyed it. We're going to jump into a fan question that we actually got today after the game's concluded from Nathaniel. Shout out Nathaniel. He wanted just plain and simple, very, very easy question. He wanted to get our thoughts on Cincinnati this week. Obviously they got just pummeled by the Browns. So I'll let you go first.
That's my pick, the Browns. To win that division. So, I mean, AFC North type of games are always dogfights. So
the weather didn't help anything either. It was raining. It was miserable there pretty much the whole game.
Yeah, so I mean, that sort of game wasn't really, I guess, out of my expectation of what was going to happen. It's division rivals and AFC North. Like I said, but in terms of Cincinnati, you just wonder how much the lost time for Joe Burrow affected him, that calf.
Yep.
And if that calf even played a part in any of the throws he had making today. But in terms of the Browns, just give credit to the Browns. Their defense showed out and really put a lot of pressure and forced a lot of errors on Joe Burrow's part because he did not have a good passing day at all.
83 total yards, I think it was, passing yards.
Yep.
Like
less than 50% completion. Yep, that's just not Joe Burrow-esque at all.
It's not.
So, and then to the Browns, I think as the game went on, they eased up more or got more comfortable offensively, especially with Deshaun Watson. He was hovering around that 50% completion rate, and then kind of turned it up a little bit towards the end.
It's funny. I just before I forget, in the first, I think it was like the second quarter, I saw a tweet, and I want to say it was either Damian Woody or Ryan Clark on ESPN, and basically they said, "Man, that's $449 million of pretty poor quarterback play on display right now in the Bengals and Browns game because both of them obviously are making huge money,
right? And
neither of them really were lighting the world on fire today, so that really made me laugh.
Right, yeah, it's just a dogfight at this point. I wouldn't take any stock into the Bengals doing.
I couldn't agree more.
Scoring 3 points and that's it.
I think the outcome wasn't that surprising, right? Or because you and I both picked the Browns this week in our picks,
right?
But I think the score was surprising, like the manner in which the Bengals lost. They did not look. They weren't even competitive.
No.
And to be honest, the Browns didn't even look that great. Right. They played better in the second half. Deshaun Watson seemed to kind of find his rhythm a little bit. That was the game I spent the majority of the morning or the afternoon watching in the early slate, so I'm a little bit more familiar with it. But there were 4 or 5 throws that I can think off the top of my head from Watson where he bounced it to their wide open receiver, short armed it, and so they fumbled at the inside the red zone. Cleveland did in the first quarter. So like the Bengals had their opportunity and they just did nothing with it. So the fact that they lost, maybe not that surprising to at least to us, but just the way they looked. But again, to your point, I'm not putting any stock in it.
Right.
I think the one thing that I will take away from that game where I think like going, because it's week 1, right? You don't want to be that person that overreacts and just sounds foolish. But I think
bury him.
The one thing that maybe I will take away from that game is the Browns defense is legit.
Oh yeah.
Because they looked good.
Yeah.
And obviously we talked about that in our breakdowns. You brought that up with Jim Schwartz. I think he has them playing hard, and I think that's going to be, just from what I saw this week, I feel like that's going to be a consistent thing
absolutely
throughout the season.
Yeah, Myles Garrett still being there and Denzel Ward over there in cornerback position. They had the pieces there. It was just about getting the philosophy input. And Jim Schwartz, there's not really many better defensive coordinators who are going to get you over the top on that one.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so good question. We are going to jump over to a brand new segment, we're just going to title it "What Do They Know?" What Do They Know segment from the What Do They Know podcast, kind of just calling out some things that we'll make fun of ourselves, right, that we got wrong,
right,
but also some things that obviously it's only week 1, but some things that maybe we are heading in the right direction on,
right,
that maybe we predicted. Yep. So I'll let you go first with I'll let you make fun of yourself first.
Well, thanks. Thanks. No, I mean, we'll start with the Thursday night game with Detroit. That was my upset alert.
Yep.
Detroit over Kansas City. You listen to me.
Can we just talk about that game for a minute? Okay, yeah. So I want to. This is unscripted, but I want to. That's another game that I really take nothing from. Like, obviously, I listen to sports talk on my radio on my way to the work the next day, and everyone was, well, are the what's going on with the Chiefs? Are the Lions now the favorite in the NFC conference? And I'm like, really? Like,
right.
Come on, guys. And so for me personally, like, that's another game that I don't put any stock in for a couple different reasons. Obviously, no Travis Kelce, no Chris Jones. Mahomes he was throwing to nobody out there.
Yeah. And
everybody that he was thrown to was dropping the ball.
Absolutely.
Nobody knew how to catch on Thursday night. And my personal opinion, with all that going against them, Detroit really didn't look that phenomenal.
No,
they won by 1 point. It was a kind of a end of the quarter, late game drive sort of thing that they had to have to pull it off. Jared Goff didn't light the world on fire. He didn't do anything bad, but he didn't show flash. Here's what I expected. I expected Detroit to win soundly because Chris Jones was not playing. I expected them, everybody talked in the preseason and in the offseason about how good their offense is going to be.
Mm.
And they put up 21 points barely to a team that didn't have their best defensive star and is not known for their defense in the slightest.
Right.
So I left that game underwhelmed with Detroit, where I feel like everybody in the national news was kind of like, whoa, like, is Detroit like the next best thing?
Right.
And for me, it was the opposite effect. I guess I'll be curious to see what you thought.
Yeah, well, for me, obviously, I had Detroit winning the North Division in that division in that realm, but the way I see it, they're probably still looking at their kinks offensively because they just have so many weapons. Because Jahmyr Gibbs, I think we both agree that he's the better rusher of the two between him and
he's explosive. When he got the ball on the outside, holy smokes, dude, so fast.
And he's it was my first look at him, but he's so good at doing that spin move and like getting all that force that they're trying to tackle him with just spun off of him, like with inertia and stuff like that, and he just takes off from there. But to me, obviously David Montgomery is still going to be there. He got 21 touches or rushes. You got the TD, and then in terms of receivers, they have St. Brown and Marvin Jones, who fumbled for the first time in his career. I read somewhere, and then and then Josh Reynolds. So I think it's just one of those things where they're going to have to figure out how to spread it out, I guess, more effectively rather than just trying to spread it out for the sake of it, which I think they were trying to do because they were moving the ball until Marvin Jones fumbled that ball in the red zone, and then all of a sudden they just stalled for the longest of times. So I think it's a work in progress, but I think they just have the weapons, and they just have too many weapons to not make it work, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think both teams are going to be fine.
Right.
Like, I think the offense for Detroit is going to get better. I think Kansas City obviously is going to get Kelsey back. They will be okay. Mm-hmm. But I didn't walk away from that game feeling immensely better about Detroit. Like a lot of it seems like the analysts did.
Right. No.
I felt like they underperformed for what they had going with them, as far as the injury and the holdout. But side note, can we just talk about how awesome Dan Campbell is? The dude went for a fake punt on the second drive of the season from inside. I think it was like his 30-yard line.
Yep.
And they got it.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's just a prime example of why people, not just his players, but like people in general, just love this dude because he could care less. He's going to play his way.
Right.
And the guys, he makes decisions that maybe people wouldn't normally make, but guys love playing for him.
Right.
I couldn't believe when he did that. Couldn't believe it.
I personally wonder how much he would attribute that to being under Sean Payton for a while there in New Orleans. Sean Payton obviously had that onside kick in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where you have that persona rub off on you, and you just play the way you want to and the way you see fit, and it fits your team, and especially if your team buys in, which I feel like the Lions have. So in terms of Kansas City, just real fast, obviously I'm in agreement with you. They'll be fine. Kelsey will come back, but this is also a reason in terms of fantasy. I'll jump into fantasy real quick. Why I drafted Kelsey in the first round, and I think because they have no one else to throw that ball to.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
that was brutal to watch for those receivers. So as soon as he's back, I think Mahomes is just going to look at Kelsey all day, every day.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
But,
all right, I totally interrupted you. I'll let you continue on your what do they know, what you got right and what you got wrong. Totally interrupted you.
Oh yeah, no, that was first point. Second point. We'll go with the Saints defense. Remember?
Okay. All right.
Must have that. You were dogging me.
I'm smart. Well, here's the thing, and we can go back to this. We can talk about this until we're blue in the face. We're not going to agree.
Right.
The Saints defense, nobody was disputing whether or not they're going to be good.
Right.
The fact was, should they be a must-have?
Right.
And my answer will still be no. Did I draft them in 2 out of my 3 leagues? Yes, I did. Ahead of you purposely.
Yep.
In both of them.
You're welcome.
But I will stand my ground that they were not a must-have. Mm-hmm. Do they have a great defense? It looks like they probably do. Yeah.
Yeah. They blocked punt, 3 interceptions, bunch of sacks. So I mean, it's just one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll put pressure.
I'll give you that.
Yep.
No, I'm not going to give that. I'm not going to give that to you because they're not a must-have. They're a good defense, but they're not a must-have. I refuse to let up on that. I will go down. I will go down with that.
Every time they have a good week, I'm going to write it right here.
Fine.
Right.
That's fine, and I'll just be reaping the benefits of my fantasy team.
I know you will.
So that's fine.
I know you will. Way to go.
What else? What else did you get right so far?
Okay.
Granted, let's just preface this real quick with we know that this is week 1.
Right.
So what we think we got right now could be completely wrong at the end of the season.
Right. It's just
but we're just gonna shout out what we give ourselves some credit, but also make fun of ourselves a little bit.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Another thing, Zay Flowers being the number 1 target there in Baltimore, he got 10 targets compared to I think 3 players got tied for 3. I think it was Odell, J.K. Dobbins, who's now out for the year. I feel bad for that guy.
And that was, again, side note, I'm interrupting you, but that was one of the things that I talked about with Baltimore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can they stay healthy? And boom, right away, it's their starting running back, torn Achilles, out for the year. Like, they just cannot catch a break, and neither can he. That's his second season-ending injury in his first 4 years?
I believe so.
I mean, the guy is just a stud if he stays on the field, but he just can't seem to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be really curious to see. Obviously, Justice Hill came in and, I think he ran the ball 8 times, but 2 of them were for touchdowns.
Yeah.
But I'll be curious to see how Baltimore makes up for him, because I really do think that he's a good talent. And they didn't light the world on fire today.
No,
Baltimore as a whole. But
yeah, I feel like Lamar Jackson wasn't really trying to run the ball today because he only had like 6 rushes for like 38 yards.
And maybe that's part of the new scheme.
You're right, to protect them a little bit with Monken over there. Because they had 3 opportunities there, like the 2-yard line, to get it in. And one of them went to Dobbins, and 2 of them went to Justice Hill. And usually, you see Lamar Jackson just pull that straight into his own gut and barrel right into the end zone. But when it comes to like within that 5-yard line, when you go into the end zone trying to get that touchdown, you're gonna get pummeled. You're gonna get hit. And so I'm assuming that's their new philosophy, is try to save Lamar Jackson as much as possible. So we'll see how they make up for J.K. Dobbins' absence there. And then the last thing I had right was the Vikings regressing from their undefeated streak of 1-possession games over there during the regular season.
Yeah, we both talked about that. Yep. I think that how funny is that like they win so many close games, and then the very first week of the next season they lose a 1-score game.
Yep.
I just think that that's just one of those things you got to laugh at.
Yeah. Shout out Jake. But
yeah, sorry,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Jake, but we had to bring it up. But yeah, I mean, they were a 13-win team last year with 11 of those being 1-score. If you even half of that, if you give them 6 wins, you take away 5 wins from that, they're an 8-win team.
Yeah.
And it becomes a very 8 wins, that's below 500. That becomes a very mediocre type of season especially for Minnesota and their expectations that they have.
Okay, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to constantly interrupt you, but
keep going.
I'm gonna. One of the things that maybe I got wrong real quick so obviously we talked about we're gonna be recording while we're watching the Sunday night game.
Mm-hmm.
We'll call out some things that we see. Last week I wrote that Daniel Jones could be my sleeper in the NFC East. I'll just give you guys his stat line real quick that just popped up on the screen.
Oh no.
He's 3 of 9 for 14 yards, and he's got 2 interceptions.
Money.
And they just dropped the third. As we're sitting here, they just dropped the 3rd interception.
Uh-huh.
So that could be something that I got scary wrong. And there's still 4 minutes left in the second quarter.
Hey, I mean, credit Dallas's defense because with Michael Parsons there, they'll always get pressure on the quarterback. But this is a sight to behold type of thing.
And this game, we're getting so off, but I think it's okay.
Right.
This game, I think it just goes to show you how one little thing can completely flip the game.
Snowball.
Because, Giants got the ball to start. They were running it down Dallas's throat. They couldn't stop them. They were in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
3rd and 2, Giants got a false start. 3rd and 7, now they get sacked, and their field goal gets blocked, returned for a touchdown. And the whole game has been completely flipped since that moment. And so I feel like the Giants came in and they were kind of giving it to Dallas, punching them in the mouth with the run game.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I mean, it's 20, as we sit here, it's 26-0 with 4 minutes left in the second quarter. This game's already over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy how one little thing, look at that guy. He looks like he's about to cry. He's sitting on the bench. They look defeated, and there's only 4 minutes, there's already 4 minutes.
Yeah, they're not even halftime.
Yeah. It's not even halftime yet. So,
Yeah, they're going to need to get to halftime right now just to
Yeah.
regroup in the worst way.
Yeah.
It just becomes one of those things where it's week one and you're like, oh, okay, it's not going to go our way this week. We got 16 more weeks to go, but
Yep.
it's not a pretty look. But yeah, in terms of other things we got wrong,
Yeah.
Jordan Love needing time. He balled out.
Yeah, he did.
He
did.
showed
We're gonna
he had
talk
all
about
those
him a
years.
little bit later too. He looked great today.
He showed out. He looked like he had all those years of preparation under him, and he was good to go today. So I felt like he was going to get his feet underneath him. It was just going to take a while. But so for him to come out week one and throw 3 TDs, all the credit to him. So
Yep.
way to go, Jordan Love. Another thing, Rams and Raiders. I think we both kind of underestimated.
Yeah.
The Rams and the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean the Rams, they were on the opposite end of what my lock was for this week. You know, I had Seattle over the Rams, and
right,
obviously got that game way wrong.
Yeah, especially when Cooper Kupp got announced as injured.
Yeah,
and going in the IR,
and they still put up 30 points.
Yeah, that's Sean
So
McVay.
what do they know?
Yeah, obviously not much about the Rams.
What do we know?
Well, yeah, I mean, they beat my projected division winners there in Seattle, so it's not a good start for Seattle there. But I wonder how much it was of Seattle, I guess, taking the Rams lightly, especially after the Cooper Kupp news, and they're just we're just gonna play at home, we're just gonna stomp on them and get them out of here. But credit Sean McVay and Stafford to put up 30 and walk out of Seattle with that W. And the last thing that I want to mention that I got wrong was Anthony Richardson over there in Indianapolis. He threw the ball a lot more than I ever expected him to, even all season. He had 37 attempts
in the game for a large portion of it. They were winning in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they put up a really good fight against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville was both of our picks to win the division pretty handedly.
Yep.
But they hung tight, and Richardson looked the part of an NFL quarterback, and I thought he was going to take a lot, maybe a year and a half, maybe even 2 years to really develop that arm. But he was accurate. He found his favorite wide receiver, Michael Pittman Jr., who I had as my stay away during our AFC South segment.
Yep.
Because I wasn't confident in his accuracy, but apparently he, at least for week one, he laid those concerns to rest.
Yep.
So, but yep.
My turn?
Your turn.
All right. So things that it appears that I got right so far. I had Brandon Ayuk as my sleeper in the NFC West.
Mm-hmm.
He went off today. He had 2 touchdowns and a bunch of catches. So he looks like and they even talked about it on the broadcast. They said, there was a ton of hype around him going into training camp. And so far in the first game, he's living up to it. So it was good to see him, shout out Arizona State.
Right. I feel like there's always something with Brandon Ayuk, though. He always comes in with so much hype, and then something just happens.
Yeah, last year he completely underperformed.
Yep.
And that's why this year I kind of felt like maybe he had something to prove. And it seems like, again, it's 1 week, but it seems like him and Brock Purdy have some chemistry. So that could be really exciting to see. Obviously, I love to see him do well as a former Sun Devil. But
right, and if Brock Purdy plays at this level,
oh my gosh, dude,
that's a scary team.
San
over there.
Francisco looked every bit as good as we talked about.
Yep.
And as everybody has talked about.
Right.
And it's funny because I feel like a lot of people, the quote unquote sexy pick this week was the Steelers over the Niners. And golly, was that wrong.
Right.
So the Steelers that's I didn't write that down, but just thinking about it, that could be something that I could say I got wrong. Is Kenny Pickett obviously had all this hype in the preseason,
right?
And he looked terrible,
leading all those drives in the preseason.
I think that's one of those things that has more to do with the Niners defense than Pickett, at least in my opinion so far. But Brandon Ayuk seems like I may have gotten that one right. We'll see. Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield, the connection that I said they were going to have. Nice little 29-yard touchdown. I think he had 6 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Baker Mayfield had at least 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Didn't throw for a ton of yards. Didn't have that many attempts, to be honest. But it goes down as a win. And I obviously had them finishing second in the division behind the Saints. So that is looking, obviously, after week 1, looking pretty good. And then the third one, the last one that I will, at least for right now, say that I got right was just not having a ton of confidence in the Dolphins defense. They got shredded by the Chargers. Granted, they won the game, but it was one of those things that, they made the play when they need to. I'll give them that. They had the Chargers had the ball with the opportunity to go down, either kick a field goal and tie or score a touchdown and win. And
actually, they just needed a field goal to win.
They needed a field goal to win. You're right, because the Dolphins kicker missed the extra point.
Right.
So they could have had a field goal to win the game, and the Dolphins defense made a stop when they needed to, but that was aided by an intentional grounding. So at the end of the day, I still think that the Dolphins defense is very, very, very suspect.
Yeah.
And
I'd pump the brakes on Miami, especially because they started off really well last year, 5-1, 6-1, whatever it was, and then they kind of fizzled out and ended up at 9-8, I believe. So it's just one of those things where I know that came with Tua's health concerns with his concussions, but at the same time, you still have to have those concussion concerns, because the concussions are things that I guess come up more frequently as they go on, and they keep piling up. So as long as Tua stays healthy, I mean, he impressed me today. He
looked amazing.
He made some throws that I was like, wow, how do you make that throw type of thing? And I mean, obviously with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, those types of caliber type wide receivers, so that helps you out quite a bit. But Tua, give credit to Tua, because he dropped some things on some baskets there.
Yep. So things that I may or may not have gotten wrong. Can't even say it. The strength of the AFC North. Again, this is only after week 1, but nobody in that division looked good today.
All right.
They went 2-2, but even the teams that won, the Browns didn't look that great. The Ravens definitely didn't look that great against the Texans. They should have blown them out. And obviously the Bengals lost, and the Steelers got thumped by the Niners. So that was, obviously, I talked about that potentially being the best division in football, and the jury is definitely still out on that. So I think I got that one wrong. We already talked about the Rams. I was not high on the Rams at all. Had them losing in my lock this week, and they came out and proved me wrong.
They probably heard.
They did. They probably heard. They probably listened to the podcast, and they said, we got to prove this guy wrong.
Bullet board material.
That's exactly what it was. So you're welcome. You're welcome, McVay.
I'm here every week.
And the last one, I wrote Keenan Allen, because he was my stay away in the AFC West.
Yep.
I will say this, yes, I got it wrong. He had a great week, but more for him, it was always because of injury. He's one of those guys that I never really expect to make it through a season.
Right.
When he's on the field, he's dynamic. But he's kind of like J.K. Dobbins. He's never been able to stay healthy, at least the last couple of years. But if he stays healthy, it looks like he and Herbert could have a pretty good connection.
In terms of Keenan Allen, real quick, there was a couple of plays there where he just made Xavier Howard kind of like force him to take some penalties, hold pass interference and stuff like that. Keenan Allen was like on it, even though he's getting up there in age and injuries. He still has that it factor type of thing.
He made Xavier Howard look not great. There were we watched the second half of the game, and I can say just in the second half there were 4 or 5 penalties on him for illegal contact, holding, pass interference, whatever. So he definitely struggled, and Keenan Allen, definitely put some work on him at some point.
Won that battle.
So we'll do this every week. It'll constantly be changing what it looks like we got right or wrong. Just something fun to add to the show. So I guess to kind of wrap up at least the actual team element of this week before we go into fantasy football part of it, we'll just do our big takeaways. What really stood out this week? We kind of obviously talked a little bit about some of them already, but I'll let you go first. Just some things that really stood out to you after week 1.
Yeah, the 49ers midseason form, I think that was just impressive to me all around. Even though I had the Steelers finishing last in that division, I still had the Steelers being at least competitive. The 49ers just being that good, and Brock Purdy kind of like putting to rest all those arm concerns with his UCL repairment. I thought that was really like a statement win. We're here, we're the sexy Super Bowl pick for a reason,
Yep.
and we're going to prove you guys wrong. And then also, in terms of, I guess the Ravens, to add to the fact with J.K. Dobbins, I think Marcus Williams, their safety, I think they fear he has a torn pec.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
I was reading on their injuries, and
Golly,
yeah,
man.
they're starting
That team.
to pile up on week 1. So I know that was your Super Bowl
was my
pick.
Super Bowl pick.
Yeah. So
Not feeling great about that at the
right.
moment.
So we'll see where they go and how they come out, because that, as you said, that division is now, I feel like, winnable, especially for them, especially with how the Bengals kind of came out a little rusty. Steelers, maybe they need more time with Pickett to kind of get the offense flowing there. And then Cleveland, I feel like it was going to be a crapshoot with Deshaun Watson, seeing how he goes about each and every week, and how his, I guess, his throwing performance, passer rating, and stuff like that develop over the course of the year. But yeah, in terms of the AFC North, it'll be interesting to see how that whole division plays out.
Yeah, my big takeaway was the Dolphins. Obviously, watching that game, being invested in that game as a Jet fan, they scare the crap out of me. They look like they could literally score any play of the game.
Right.
Tyreek Hill is just a force. He's just so fast.
He blew by everybody.
We kind of joked in our breakdowns that Tua throws a 10-yard slant. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill break it, but he made some throws today on the run. One in particular where he was scrambling, running up in the pocket, and threw it, I think, 30 or 40 yards downfield, just perfectly in the hands on a dime to Tyreek Hill. And that was a great throw. And so I think the Dolphins are going to be a problem this year. I really, really do. If Tua can stay healthy, I think that they are going to be a difficult out. They just have speed like I've never seen before. And we talked about their defense. I don't know how good their defense even has to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because prime example is today. They gave up, what was it, 30 some odd, 34 points, and they scored 36.
Yep.
So it's like, they're gonna be an issue, I think.
It's gonna be depending on health, because if you lose someone on that offense, all of a sudden that defense is gonna look even worse than what it looked like today, and all of a sudden you're in trouble.
Yeah, and if they get a running back like they want to, so if they were to hypothetically trade for Jonathan Taylor after those 4 weeks, I mean, my goodness. Like, because we were watching the game today and they were trying to run it and just nothing was happening. I looked at you and I'm like, they just need to not run the ball.
Right.
Like, they have no problem passing it. They just need to stop running. But if they were able to add that to their repertoire, I mean, my goodness, they're gonna be scary good.
Oh yeah,
I think.
Yeah, they represent problems there.
Now, yeah, I mean, was the Chargers defense really that good? Who knows? That remains to be seen. It could have been when they play a good defense like the Bills or the Jets or maybe the Niners or whoever, maybe it's a different story.
Right.
But as of today, the Dolphins look like they're going to be a big problem. So that was my big takeaway. Other than that, I just thought it was a weird week. I thought that, I mean, obviously it's week 1. You come in with these preconceived ideas of teams based on last season. And I feel like a lot of it didn't play out that way. Like a lot of the teams still won, but like Philadelphia struggled. Cincinnati obviously lost. I'm trying to think, there were some other teams that really, Seattle, we already talked about them. They lost. And so I feel like a lot of the quote unquote good teams maybe didn't play their best football today.
Right.
And we talk about the product of having one less preseason game. People say it takes 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season to actually warm up and to get the actual product that you come to expect. But I just thought it was a weird week. I thought that a lot of from we're going to transition here shortly, but from a fantasy perspective, nobody really blew up. There were tons of low scoring matchups. I just felt like it was kind of a weird week to start out the season. I felt like it was a lot of unexpected results.
Right, there was a few heavy, I guess, home run hitters like a Tyreek Hill or I guess anybody in that game in general, that Chargers Miami game. But yeah, everywhere else it was very clunky in terms of offensive I guess play.
Yeah.
And scheming. With the shortening of the preseason game, I feel like it's how many years have we had 3 preseason games? Like 4.
It's not
5?
a lot. I want to say 4 or 5 years.
Okay, yeah. You would hope that the players kind of get, I guess, that feeling of knowing you only have 3 preseason games now to ramp up rather than the 4 that used to be there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, in terms of week 1, you could definitely see there's definitely a lot of, I guess, wanting of to be perfect, but then they just aren't there yet. There's a lot of timing issues and stuff like that. I feel like even the Detroit game, someone was doing a jet sweep and it hit them right off their arm.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where it's just timing and execution that I'm sure will get corrected by week 5 midseason type of thing. So that's when it gets to the nitty gritty and you'll start seeing the good teams starting to separate themselves.
Yep. All right. So we're going to transition to the fantasy football part. We wanted to just go over some standouts and also some busts. I'll let you go first.
Okay. Yeah, standouts. So Tyreek Hill. Need I say more? That guy just runs past by everybody.
He had like, 240 yards, I think? 10 catches, something like that. I mean, just
something ridiculous.
Just blew up.
Yeah, I think I was probably facing him in one league.
I was just going to say, I was fortunate enough to play him, and I got crushed in that league, so thank you.
Yep. I think he scored like 40 points against me. Yep. So shout out to whoever had him. You did well. I had him last year, and honestly, Tyreek Hill, as long as he has that speed, he's dynamic in every way, shape, and form. That guy was just blowing by every corner that you put on him.
Yep.
So Tyreek Hill was a standout there, and then Michael Pittman Jr., who proved me wrong as I'm not even sure if it's him or it's Anthony Richardson more so that proved me wrong type of thing. But Michael Pittman Jr. actually really balled out today, and he had a little bit of a slow start. I think I started watching like in the second quarter, and that's when he got his first catch, and he ended up with like 8 for close to 100 yards on a TD. So Michael Pittman Jr. was a surprise to me. In terms of busts, I had a must-have of Drake London, mainly because I thought that combination with him and Desmond Ridder and that connection they had last year was going to carry over a little bit. But Desmond Ridder kind of didn't have to do much today. They scored 24 points, and they only allowed 10 to Carolina. But so Desmond Ridder kind of took that backseat to, I guess, Bijan Robinson, because Bijan Robinson had that receiving touchdown, and then they kind of just ran it down the throat with Algier, the rest of it, who had like 20-plus rush attempts and 75 yards and 2 TDs.
On my bench.
Oh, I think he had 15 attempts, but on your bench?
Yep.
Way to go.
Thank you.
Way to go, Tyler.
Thanks for that.
But yeah, him and then Jamar Chase. Obviously, that Bengals offense.
Yeah. Nobody in Cincinnati did much of anything today.
Right. And I mean, I think he was going like projected to go like number 2, Jamar Chase, right behind Justin Jefferson. Yep. So you were hoping at least, or projecting for that top overall production from Jamar Chase, and you just didn't get it. Obviously, you don't know how much that was because of Joe Burrow's injury, but at the same time, it's the same trio he's had for numerous years now: T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Jamar Chase. But also T. Higgins, he got targeted 8 times, had 0 receptions. Yeah. That's crazy to me. So I think there's something going on with Burrow. I'm not sure if it was his offensive line or he just didn't feel comfortable. But Jamar Chase was definitely a disappointment, especially with what position you probably took him at. Yeah,
no doubt. Couple standouts for me, obviously Jordan Love. He was projected 14 points. He ended up with 23. So he played great.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Jefferson, the dude had 8 catches for 130 yards in the first half. I think he only, he kind of had a slow second half. He only ended with 9 for $150, but
right.
That's still a phenomenal week.
Right.
And then the game's not even over yet, but I wrote Dallas defense because, and this was as of the end of the first quarter, they had 28 fantasy points.
Yeah.
And that, they had a blocked field goal, they ran it back for a touchdown. They had a pick 6. And they're just sacking Daniel Jones left and right. It's 26-0 at halftime right now. It's just crazy. Daniel Jones just looks lost.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's the Dallas defense is playing currently just phenomenal.
Right.
But I wanted to bring up a funny point that was texted me today. And basically he said, like, hey, why are all my guys that are blowing up on my bench? And so I thought that was so funny because I feel like that's a pretty common issue after week one, because we have these guys in our starting lineup that, again, you draft them high, you think that they're going to have all this value,
right?
And then you draft your bench guys, you don't really, you're kind of just trying to fill a roster,
right? Just trying to find the love.
You have guys that go off that maybe it was a fluke, but maybe they're going to be one of your guys that you need to throw in your starting lineup going forward. For me today, it was Tyler Algier from Atlanta. I had him in 2 out of my 3 leagues. He had 75 yards and 2 touchdowns on my bench, and so I'll be honest. I'm probably not going to start him again next week. But if he blows up again next week, then maybe we'll be having a different conversation next week. But I just thought that was really funny that he said that. He was like, man, like why is my bench blowing up and my starters are just getting crushed?
Yeah, week one is always such a funny thing in terms of fantasy, because you don't know. You obviously you have an implementation of like new offensive coordinators and new offensive and defensive coordinators, and it just creates matchups all over the place that teams can take advantage of, and things that you think are going to be in your favor actually aren't.
Right.
So it's just one of those things where, especially with running back committees like Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson there, you just don't know how it's going to play out. Like Detroit with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Like I said earlier, we think Jahmyr Gibbs is probably the better rusher, but with David Montgomery producing at a level where he's scoring TDs, they're not going to really take him out of there.
Right.
At least they have no reason to, unless he starts fumbling the ball in the red zone or something. But it's week one is just a lot of feeling out how things are going to play out. And honestly, with running back committees, I don't think you ever find the answer that you really want to have anyway. So yeah. to that person, just stay patient.
Well, and that's it's going to be a headache all season.
Oh yeah,
you're always going to have that, but I feel like week one is where it's the worst.
Oh yeah,
because you'll have guys. It'll be a complete surprise. But I feel like that's what makes fantasy football so fun, is that and miserable, because every week you'll have that guy on your bench that went off for 20 points and maybe could have won you your matchup.
Yep, if I started him.
Exactly. But that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it, guys do it every single year. It's why I'm addicted to it.
Right.
All right. So that's our fantasy aspect of the show. We're going to wrap up here by just doing our picks for next week. If we just recap last week real quick with our picks that we considered our locks, like our definite games, and then our upset picks. Jeff was 2-0. He had the Jags over the Colts as his lock, and the Lions over the Chiefs as his upset. I went 1-1. My lock, the Seahawks, failed me big time, and my upset was the Packers over the Bears, which went very well. So for this week, I'll let you go with your picks.
So for upset, I got the Ravens over the Bengals.
Bengals favored by 3.
Pretty sure it's in Cincinnati, but I know the Ravens are going in there with injuries with J.K. Dobbins and Marcus Williams now, and we'll see who else shows up on that injury report. But I think the Bengals are going to need a little bit more time to get that offensive flow going, and I think. The Ravens, although they struggled a little bit, they still scored like 5 points on Houston. So at least they have some positives to go in there, and it just becomes one of those AFC North battles like it just happened with Cincinnati and the Browns. It's going to be a dogfight, and I think the Ravens are probably going to be a little bit better prepared and just come out with that W. Well, more than likely, hopefully, for my own pick's sake. And then for lock, I got the Bills over the Raiders. I know the Raiders won today, and I'm still. I want to say underestimate.
They didn't look great.
Right.
Garoppolo did not look good at all.
No.
I mean, I don't know if it's more of a testament to how good the Raiders played or how bad the Broncos are.
Right.
Because we could have a whole segment on the Broncos and the expectations for them this year, but they only put up 16 points with a new coach, new offense, quarterback guru, the whole thing. So, yeah, we'll see if the Raiders. I'm not a believer. I guess I say all that to say I'm just not a believer yet in the Raiders at
same
all.
Here. So Bills a little bit more proven. So I'm definitely locking that the Bills over the Raiders.
Okay. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not feeling great about either of my picks now after watching the first half of this Sunday night game, because both of them are involved.
No.
In my picks. So I mean, who knows? But next week, for my lock, I have the Giants over the Cardinals.
Oof.
Which
Oof.
I'm not feeling terrific about the Giants right now.
Uh-huh.
Down 26-0 at halftime.
Right.
So we'll see there. And my upset, I have the Jets over the Cowboys. Those Cowboys were favored by 3. Again, we haven't seen the Jets play yet,
Right.
but the Cowboys defense looks very, very good. And obviously we know that the Jets offensive line is an opportunity. So those could be, I could be 0-2 next week. But we'll see. Though, yeah,
it's just one of those things where it's the strength of the Cowboys and the weakness of the Jets,
Yeah.
and it's just going to be one of those things
Like a
where
matchup thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
it might be a nightmare matchup
Yep.
thing for the Jets. So we'll see how
We'll
that
see what
plays out.
happens.
Yep.
All right. Well, week 1 is in the books. I am so happy that football is back. I can't even tell you.
Saints won, so I'm
The Saints.
I'm
we
living
didn't
it
talk
up.
about the Saints at all this week.
Are you surprised?
Would you like to talk about the Saints?
Not really,
Okay.
because they didn't look that
They
good. To
didn't
be
look that
honest
good
with
either.
you,
I didn't.
they didn't look that great.
Yeah.
They came out with a W, but there was definitely a lot of mistakes, especially along that offensive line that really had me, I guess, making me nervous, especially left tackle Trevor Penning. So we'll just wait till next week, see how they look, and if they start showing
Who do they have next week? Carolina, right? Or no?
Who do they have next week? I can't even remember.
Mm.
But I think I was just living in the moment of beating Tennessee. 1 week at a time, Nick. Come on.
Well, they're on Monday Night Football next week. I know that.
Are we really?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to look real
I'll
quick.
look
We're
real
just going to
quick.
look.
Okay.
We're going to look and see who they play, because I know they're on Monday Night Football.
Wanna see.
Yeah, the Panthers.
Well,
They're at Carolina.
Okay, so
So that should be a win, I would think.
You would hope so.
But
You would hope so.
we'll see.
Especially that defense against the
Rookie quarterback. Yeah.
I'm hoping that'll
Yeah.
be a good win, but we'll see.
All right. Well, obviously, I didn't have any Jets gear to wear or to not wear this week because they haven't played yet. Obviously, I got my
Right.
hat on, but we'll see. I might be in a great mood next week, or I might be in a horrible mood.
Yeah, exactly.
But we'll see. We'll catch you guys next week with another recap of week 2, everything that we saw. This is obviously a new format for us. We're not doing the breakdowns. We're kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free. We're not going to take it personally. We want to make sure that the show is enjoyable and entertaining and informational. So if you guys have recommendations on a cadence or like a structure or what you guys think we should talk about, I mean, text us, email us, message us, whatever.
Mhm.
We are more than willing to hear recommendations. We've already had a couple thrown out to us. And we appreciate that very much. So we're figuring it out kind of on the fly, but hopefully you guys liked week 1, and we'll catch you next week for week 2.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to What Did They Know podcast. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media outlets to see future episode details, and don't forget to send in any questions or topics that you want to see the guys discuss in their weekly episodes to come.